let's start with Connor, who is the Vice President of Sales of Zyfin Corporation, which is a software company based in San Diego in California. Connor, if you want to introduce yourself, and you can start sharing your slides. You were made co-host, and welcome to our session.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, I was talking away to myself. It's it's funny. It's funny. I've got my children on the Zoom for school in the other room, and they're probably much more proficient at it than I am.
I'm on the same situation here. I'm trying to keep them quiet. Thank you.
Yes, and I've learned a whole new appreciation for IT support with my children going to school remotely. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are. My name is Connor Ward. I'm the Vice President of Sales at a company called Zyfin, X-I-F-I-N, in San Diego, California. Probably if you look up in the sky today, you'll see some of the smoke we're donating to the rest of the world right now, because a lot of our state is on fire at the moment. But so I'm just here to talk to you about LIS in general. We've been working with, and I saw Dr. Dan Milner from ASCP on a number of different projects in Africa, specifically in Rwanda and Tanzania and soon Ethiopia. And just give you a brief overview of the LIS technology itself. I was fortunate enough to see a questionnaire that was circulated, so I have a little bit of context in terms of what you're dealing with and kind of what your needs are on a daily basis. And then I'll actually show you the application very quickly. So as I mentioned, Zyfin is based here in San Diego. Primarily, we support laboratories, reference laboratories, hospital laboratories, a lot of AP and molecular laboratories here in the United States and in Europe, and you know, with ASCP in Africa as well. I'll move quickly. One of the interesting things is, and this hasn't anything to do with the LIS, but it's been interesting as COVID has impacted the entire world to see how that has impacted the lab industry itself. We have a lot of data, so we put what we call this laboratory volume index out on a weekly basis. And really what we've seen is if you go to the far left there, that's the pre-COVID baseline. We saw a huge dip in regular routine testing across all of the laboratory industries here in the US. Fortunately, a lot of that volume has been supplemented by additional COVID testing, but even still in pathology, for example, testing is still not up to its pre-COVID baseline levels. So I think people are putting off these routine tests in the United States because of the impact of COVID. So I'm sure everybody else is seeing that. But this is more of an interest piece, but certainly timely and interesting nonetheless. As I mentioned, we've been working with Dr. Dan Milner in Africa with ASCP, and it's been a very rewarding project. We're really looking to expand our footprint in the usage of the application. COVID has certainly not helped in that, and you know, there's been some government regulations maybe that have slowed things up a little bit too. But I'll talk about that in the context of maybe what some of the challenges you have in Nigeria as well. So this I grabbed a couple of screenshots from the survey that Marcia sent to me, and the first thing I wanted to discuss and get out on the table was our laboratory information system is a cloud-based system. So what does that mean? That means we host it on behalf of all of our clients. Now, there's huge value to doing so. First off, our clients don't have to worry about having servers on site. They don't have to worry about databases. They don't have to worry about things like backups, backing their data up. We take care of that in our facility for all of our clients. Also, as we issue new releases to the software, we can do that for everybody in one step. So there's a lot of value to keeping everybody on the most current version of the software. Now, when we're talking about Africa, there's a challenge, unfortunately, that we don't see as much here in the U.S., and that's your internet connectivity. So this question from the questionnaire that you know, on a daily basis, the internet and the Wi-Fi is challenging. You know, that is an issue. And again, being really above board, if the internet is down, the LIS is down. You cannot access the LIS. So I know certainly with ASCP, they've invested heavily in that type of infrastructure in their labs. But this is definitely a trade-off to any cloud-based system, is that if your internet is down, you need to revert back to a paper-based process. So again, that's kind of the nature of the beast, as it were, but there's certainly other trade-offs in that, you know, you don't have to invest in the hardware. That's kind of done. We do that on your behalf. And here is our hosting facility, and it's just worth showing this to you to re-emphasize both the security, of course, patient and PHI is critical. The security of that PHI is critical to all of our clients, but also having, you know, high-end infrastructure to really support the application is critical. And we have a lot of government entities also house data in this facility. It's in Las Vegas. Last slide, and then I will jump into the application itself. So this, again, is from the survey that you answered, and these are kind of the key functions that you look for in a laboratory information system. And really the beauty of an LIS is it can be as simple or as advanced as you need it to be. So, and what do I mean by that? You can configure workflows to manage every kind of facility and function within your operation, or you can have it be very streamlined and really function as a patient tracking and reporting application. It's kind of up to you, and the system itself should be and can be tailored to really meet your specific needs. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into the application and just kind of take you through the life of a specimen, if that's all right. Marcia, can you see this? It's ABC Laboratories in the top left?
Yes.
Just nod if you can see it. Okay, perfect. So I'm in the actual laboratory information system right now. And this ABC Laboratories, this is my fictitious lab, but really this is the heartbeat of the system. So this is our work list, and users, when they access the system, they log in with a secure username and password. You'll notice up here, here's a URL. We are connecting, I'm in Google Chrome. We're connecting to this via the web. So again, one of the benefits to a cloud-based system, we talk about trade-offs here, one of the benefits is that I can access this application from anywhere that I have an internet connection. So I can sign out cases, and a lot of the use cases for the ASCP project is so that we can connect physicians in the United States for training purposes, for mentoring purposes. They can see the application as well if they have the credentials to do so. They can see the application as well as if they were sitting in Africa. So the access to the application, the access to the data can be done anywhere as long as the person has the credentials to access that data. And you can have different levels of credentials. So for example, if I'm in the laboratory and my role is a grosser, I can be limited to only seeing cases that are in the grossing step, and you can see here where we can manage the actual steps in the workflow, and you set these up, or we set these up on behalf of all our clients. And you, as I said, you can have these steps be as granular as you need. So a grocer may only see information that's pertinent to them. They can set up their own work list. So when I log on to the system, I can see, okay, these are the cases that I need to work. Alternatively, if I've got slides or a slide book in front of me, and I have a scanner and these cases are labeled, I can just scan those in to launch the case to the current step. So there's a variety of ways to getting to your work, and the system helps manage that work very efficiently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and accession a case. There's a variety of different ways of getting information into the system. We're going to go with the simple individual accession, as if a paper requisition showed up at the lab and I have to manually input the information into the system. Okay. Notice this first box here. It's called a performing lab. What on earth does that mean? Well, take our use case of Rwanda. We've got multiple facilities throughout the country of Rwanda. You can set up a single LIS environment, and then you can set up what are called individual performing labs. Each performing lab will be that physical location. They can share test codes, they can share workflows, and as importantly, particularly for Ministry of Health reporting, you can run aggregated reporting across all of those facilities. So it's just a nice way of setting up the LIS and then really segmenting data by physical location. Now there's going to be, I'm in a demonstration database, so there's going to be a number of different fields that are not pertinent to you, and that's fine. One of the beauties of web-based applications is you can turn on and off these things, but I'll quickly go through this. So I'm going to indicate, okay, where did it come from? If it's a hospital, I'll pick this one. If it's a hospital, you may have multiple facilities, so you can set that up. And again, part of what we're trying to accomplish here is really, take out free-form typing and standardize data and make it simple and efficient for the individual who's performing a particular step to move through their work. Okay, so who sent? Who's the referring physician? That's important not only from a documentation standpoint, but also on the back end when we create the report, the system will know, hey, this particular doctor needs this information sent to a portal. A lot of docs still get information and reports sent via fax, and there's other mechanisms as well too. There's some ancillary fields down here, but an external accession ID, this might be an MRN number, just some identifier that maybe the hospital knows that specimen as, so that we can maintain that connection to the source system. Okay, I'm moving down to the patient. So this is the patient information section. Again, these fields can all be tailored to your specific need. In this case, I'm going to use my trustee test patient. If that patient has been at this lab before, or we know of that patient in the system, we will try to match that. So indicate that, yep, that indeed is this particular patient who's been here before. So we're going to pull in all of the associated historical demographic information, but as importantly, or more importantly, on the back end again, if we want to create and generate a final report that shows the patient's history, if that patient is being monitored over time, for example, there's a ton of really valuable information to be able to show that patient history on a single consolidated report. Okay, so now we're going to load what we call the case type. And the case type, and I'm just going to grab a client standing order to default in the information. The case type is really the different type of cancer. In this case, I'm going to just do a derm case, but you might have a GYN. So you can see in my demo database, I have quite a few different case types set up. But really what this case type does is it dictates the workflow internally at the lab. So in this case, I have a derm case, and it's automatically going to default in a single H&E for each specimen. I've got 2 specimens in this case. Okay. All right. So I'll just go quickly. We can default if a particular client, a submitting physician, has some important information that you need to convey internally. We can add client standing instructions. We can add any comments maybe that are written on the paperwork. If there's some clinical information that we need to capture kind of in an ad hoc manner, we can do that. If I could spell. We also have this button, and it's actually a really important way of, we call it tagging information, and you'll see this throughout the system. And these tags, this is a custom list, but it's really a way of tracking, in this case, incomplete information. So, for example, you know, if the patient name or you know, there's an incorrect date of birth, we can tag it, and that will indicate to somebody further downstream, or somebody, it'll appear on somebody's work list that I need to resolve this issue. In the United States, it impacts how a laboratory gets paid if there's incomplete information, but also from a reporting standpoint, you want to make sure that the information that you're sending out is complete and accurate. So this is just a way of identifying deficiencies prior to reporting. Okay, so I'm going to hit done. That completes the order, and at this point, you can do a variety of different things. This particular workflow that I have set up is designed to print labels. And labels, you can think of them as mini reports. And I'll just show, expand this so you can see that. There's no real magic to labels. As I said, they're just mini reports. But from an automation and efficiency standpoint, labels can add a lot to the process. So instead of having to hand key case IDs or specimen information, you can scan barcode labels and it'll automatically take you to the case in its particular step. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back to my work list. So I've accessioned the case. If I'm an accessioner, maybe I go on to the next one and I move through all of the specimens that have arrived at the laboratory. I think my kids are actually on Zoom now. Slow down a little bit. Here is the case that I just created. Now we assign a system assigned case number to it. The case number is just that. It's a unique number that the case is going to assign to it. So we'll assign a case number, but we'll also assign unique specimen IDs as well, because if you've got different case types, so you may have, well, in this case, of course, we've got 2 derm samples. So you need to have a unique identifier for each, but you also may have different case IDs. So for example, if you've got a derm case and some other subspecialty that you need to track separately. Okay, so let's go into the next step. So I've now got my grocer's hat on. So I'm going to click on the grossing histology step. And it's going to take me into the screen for this particular case. And again, I could have gotten there by just scanning a barcode as well. So here you can see up top, here's some basic information about the case and the patient. I can click on that without leaving my data entry screen. Here are the 2 specimens that I accessioned. And down here, and these are all configurable boxes as well. Down here is where I'm going to input my gross description. Now I can free text it, or again, a great way of minimizing, you know, free typing, both for time and efficiency purposes, but also for standardization purposes, is to set up macros. And so I can indicate, okay, it's a punch biopsy. You'll notice I've got these hashtags, so it can be set up that I can quickly use a hotkey to scroll through these hashtags and enter my measurements. Again, we're just, these are little things, but on a day-by-day basis, just makes the lab a little bit more efficient rather. And I'll indicate a gross description for that second specimen as well. Okay. And down here you can see, okay, here are the blocks and the associated slides. If I need to, if it's a particularly large specimen, I can add an additional block or add an additional slide. So there's a lot of flexibility to kind of manage things on a case-by-case basis. Okay, I'm quickly going to just push this to the next step in the workflow. And as I said, the workflow itself is totally configurable by you or by what makes sense for your laboratory operation. Now, in the case of derm, it might be completely different than a prostate workflow, for example. I'll show you a prostate case in a little bit too. I'll just show you the final step. In this case, I've got it set up as a quality review step. This may be totally irrelevant to you, but the purpose of showing you this is that it's just an additional step in the workflow. You can have data inputs. For example, you know, if you need to mark something that was QNS, quantity not sufficient, or TNP, you can do so here. But I'm just going to move this to the next step just to, in the interest of time. And the next step that we have set up here is what we call the professional, or this is the case sign out, the pathologist case sign out step. So the first thing I wanted to point out as I click in this, so I'm now the pathologist, and you know, maybe I've got my you know, slide tray. I scan the slide I'm interested in. It'll take me to this data entry screen. The first thing you'll notice here is that there's a lot of information. Here's the actual data input screen. Here's where I put my diagnosis in, and I'll do that in a sec. But there's a lot of useful information held in these tabs up here. So certainly here's a case overview. What type of case is it? Any patient detail, here's the patient information. If I need to make a phone call, I can do that. That information is up top. Oftentimes there's associated documentation. Maybe you scan the requisition form, or there's other supporting documentation that you want to associate with this particular case. You'd be able to do that and see that here. You'll notice this prior or concurrent cases is highlighted in red, and this is my test patient, so there's a lot of them. But this shows you that this patient has a history, or in some cases, there may be additional tests going on concurrently in parallel, and it's often useful to know that. I'll skip over the coding. That's more of a US billing thing. Case tags. I showed you case tags before. These are different types of tags, but it's a useful way of flagging a case that, you know, needs to go to tumor registry, for example, or there's something interesting about this case that you want to tag, and this tag will allow you to query and retrieve this case or a group of cases who fall under a similar kind of tag and review them at a later date. So it's just a way of placing meta tags. I can share this case with a colleague, and so I can indicate what colleague I want to send it to, and they will get a notification. Hey, you've got this case that's been referred to you. And they can add internal notes and send it back to you, or I can reassign the case entirely to a different doctor if I'm not comfortable with it or whatever. Okay, so now I'm going to go and actually input my diagnosis. Once again, you'll notice these boxes, and the actual view of the data is entirely configurable by you. And as I said, I'll show you a prostate in a sec, which looks quite different. But in this case, I can start typing my diagnosis, add comments and microscopic if I want, or again, given that maybe we want to drive a lot of standardization in the system, I can use macros, which are effectively canned text. They're of course going to be test specific, and I can even have hotkeys. So I'll pick kind of my shortcut key, and you'll notice, it actually moved me down to the next specimen. You'll notice that it defaulted in my diagnosis, the comments, and the microscopic. Now I can append. If I wanted to add another macro, I can certainly do that, or I can append additional text onto the end of that. You can see I had a lot of coffee this morning. If it's particularly important, you know, I may want to highlight it in red, or I could have had it defaulted in red in the first place. Let me go ahead and just grab another one. So you can see very quickly I've inputted my diagnosis, and you can have a ton of different additional functionality, including any images. I don't have any associated with this, but if you want to capture images for just preserving images with the actual case in the LIS, or a lot of labs want to show those images on the reports, you can do that also. There's ways of doing that manually. We can also automate that process as needed. And then I can preview the report. Now these reports, this is kind of an example template that we have, but our labs really get quite creative in how they want to show and present the data, and that's fine. How you show the data is entirely up to you. some coding at the bottom, but we can have the report really kind of show the data in a variety of different formats. So that's reports are the one things we really customize for our clients. Once I sign this report, the system will go and say, okay, who do I need to send this report to, and how do I need to send it to them? So it'll distribute the report via a portal. It may go into it may be sent out by fax. We can also send it electronically to the submitting physician's EMR if they have the capability to do that. So we have a lot of flexibility there. Now, if I'm the physician, I decide, you know what, I want to add a stain to this. I can do that by hitting this Add Test Pull Slide. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to add the stain to this particular specimen. Let me see, I'll add a PAS. Okay, I can add a note. And then I can send it, maybe mark it as a high priority and send it back to the lab. So again, this is the electronic process. I've been into a lot of labs where this is communicated on paper or by email. So what this does is it sends it back to the lab, and it's going to appear on a work list back at the laboratory. And we call that a test add-on work list, so that, and oftentimes labs will have a monitor sitting on a desk, and they'll see these additional cases come in. And if I just click on what that work list might look like, here are all the specimens. And again, I've got a demo database, so there's quite a few in there. So here's the one I just added right at the bottom of the list. Okay, last thing I did want to show you